It's more than just steel and gears. It pulls you in and doesn't let go.
Okay, hello. Welcome back to the carousel. I'm here with Brian Chau. What's up, Brian?
How's it going? Great to be on.
Good. You're looking good, brother. Are you on the peptides?
So that's a funny story. I am not, but I went to so for a year I worked for Network School, which is Balaji's thing, and they put me in fat jail. They consensually put me in fat jail, and I lost like 20 pounds. It was great.
What was fat jail? I need to go to fat jail. What was that?
Yeah, so basically, like we worked out almost every day of the week.
Oh, this was in like
and we had,
Singapore? Is this thing in Singapore or
Yeah.
whatever? Oh, wow. Okay.
and we also had like pre-prepared meal plans and stuff like that, like calorie limited meal plans and stuff like that. Macros maxing.
Wow. So before we even get into anything else, tell us about this thing he's got. This is his network state that he has in Singapore. So what is this thing? Why were you there?
Yeah, it's not okay. This is a
network state.
This immediately gets an even crazier story because they moved the whole city from it was this like artificial island next to Singapore called Forest City. They moved the entire city from there to Kazakhstan. Like this happened like last month.
What the hell?
It's amazing.
Jeez. And what? Okay, go on. Why did they move the entire thing to Kazakhstan?
I'm like trying to present this in a way that doesn't sound made up. I'm already like I can't even stop myself from laughing. I mean, it's actually like pretty serious. I know a lot of the people involved, but it started. So they were running Network School in Forest City, which is in this like the Singapore Johor Special Economic Zone in Malaysia, and it's like the special economic zone that was originally designed to like invite in investors, invite in tech people, stuff like that. And that was under like the federal jurisdiction of Malaysia. And that kind of tax authority and business authority and stuff like that. It's under this thing called the Malaysia Digital Economic Corporation, which is actually part of the Malaysian government.
Okay.
And then there's this other government, which is like their state government, the state government of Johor, which is like, their equivalent of like a governor and like state. And that was controlled by a different party. And the thing about the state government is that, this is a based podcast. So we know that when I'm saying like, when I say anti-Semitism, I don't mean like, disagreements about foreign policy. This is not your like granddad's anti-Semitism. Okay. This is a entirely different power level of anti-Semitism in this party. And so what they did was they called in to the federal government of Malaysia a bunch of false requests about Israeli nationals at Network School. This is what they accused us of. And I think actually the Western media got it wrong. The Western media was accusing this guy Anwar, who's the prime minister of Malaysia, of anti-Semitism. And I think
wait a second. Why?
Right.
For what? Wait a second. The U.S. was
so
I'm getting so
confused.
confused.
So let me finish the story, and then
Okay.
it'll make
Yeah.
sense
Go
why.
do your thing.
The kicker of the story is that they end up revoking like the NS business license, which had to be filed in the state government for unrelated reasons, things unrelated to the passport thing. Actually, I should go through the whole story. So they make these false claims about Israeli nationals. The federal government goes in and investigates and says like, actually, no Israeli nationals here. You guys are just wrong. So I think that the federal government was actually acting in good faith. And then it became very clear with people who were familiar with this political party, Malaysians who were kind of like knew what this political party was about, the BMNO, that their issue was that there were ethnic Jews who were American citizens, Polish citizens, French citizens, whatever, right? Not Israelis at all. It was like unironic anti-Semitism, and this party had said things like, we have to boycott Jewish businesses. Jews are controlling the opposition party. Like, this is not your granddad's anti-Semitism. It's like an entirely different level in the developing world. And the thing that they eventually settled on to go after Network School was the Network School business license was under an entity filed in Malaysia called Network School Malaysia. The sign above Network School just says Network School. Does not say Network School Malaysia. See where this is going? So they revoked the entire operating license of Network School. The state government did the entire operating license of Network School because the sign said Network School in Malaysia. Instead of Network School Malaysia. It's like, you show up to the sign. It's like, this is Network School, and it doesn't say Network School Malaysia instead. It's like not a single person has ever been confused by that. But that was their rationale. That was their explicit rationale. That's their justification for it. So as a result, of course, the American press was really fired up about this. Interestingly, there was this like a committee of like 8 House Democrats that urged the U.S. government to like revoke military training ties with Malaysia over this, and they named Anwar specifically. They were kind of like trying to pin the blame on Anwar, which I don't really know why. I think that may have been like just kind of ignorance rather than like some kind of political goal. I mean, he is the prime minister of Malaysia, so that's to be fair. But so I had stopped working for Network School before this entire blow up. I had actually left the campus, left the city before that. But to my knowledge, Anwar has always been a pretty good faith counterparty. I mean, obviously, and for good reason, he's serving the people of Malaysia, but he's like a generally upfront and like goes by the letter of the law, and that's what we saw when they called in all of those like federal passport checks, which is like he went in, he did the checks, not him personally, but the federal government went in, did the checks, was like, no Israeli nationals here. And you could tell the state party was kind of getting irritated because they were following the letter of the law instead of going after anyone who was ethnically Jewish, and that's when they kind of like cascaded and went to this like signage justification. So I think most of the blame is probably on the state government and not on the federal government and not on the Prime Minister Anwar, which is what this letter from House Democrats said, or not from all House Democrats, but eight Democrats in the House.
Wow. Okay. So this all led to you guys having to move to Kazakhstan.
Is this coherent at all? Is
kind
this
of, yeah, kind of. So how was Kazakhstan different from? So how many people are at this thing? Like, what is this thing to begin with? Why don't you just say what it actually is?
So it's basically a project to build a new community, kind of like startup city type thing. Mostly like people who are pro tech. Maybe you could say the tech right. So some of them are just like normally like pro tech. They want to build their AI company or something like that. Not really like politically affiliated at all. I think that's actually like the vast majority of people there. But there were like 500 people there on the island in Malaysia, and then so all of this happened like after I left. Both stopped working for Apology and also stopped
Okay, so you weren't ever
living
in
on the
Kazakhstan. You
island.
didn't do Kazakhstan.
So yeah. I don't actually know how many people followed them to Kazakhstan, but yeah, I know for sure it was like over 500 people who were there before.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. So you were working there, and were you this project that you just launched? The whole thing is you kind of go there and like work on a project, right? Is that the idea?
Yeah. So I was not doing this at network school. This was like after I left.
Okay.
I was actually working like for the network school company. I was doing like software for the network school company. But
Oh,
yeah,
I see.
the idea
Okay.
is like most people who go there are like building software in some way. Not everyone, there's other things, but that's the main idea.
Okay, so but the whole idea, okay, so you were actually working for them, but people go there not
Yeah.
to work for them. They go to like work on their project and work out all day, every day, and blah, blah, blah. And it's this like,
Yeah, exactly.
yeah.
And the fitness stuff, the meal plan stuff that's like part of the appeal as well.
Did you enjoy that?
Yeah, I actually did. I mean, I think I'm in general someone who is not particularly like there are some people who like really like enjoying different foods, tasting different foods. I don't want the food to taste bad, but I think I'm probably in like the bottom 10% in terms of people who like care about like the variety of food and having like different things every day. So for me, like having the same meal plan every day, and of course using that as a way to like lose weight, that was great.
Nice. So it's almost like being a monk. It's being like a tech monk.
Yeah, maybe.
Wow. All right. So yeah, you were kind of gone for a while, so you must have been doing that. And I mean, like, in that environment? Like, do people hang out? Like, what's the vibe?
Yeah. It's sort of like a college campus, like Stanford.
How many people are there?
A lot of people compared it to like an MBA. But it's like, yeah, people will go there. There will be some people who are like total shut-ins. Like I see them like when they're checking out, and I'm like, I have never seen you in my entire life. But I think most people will like hang out in some of the common areas. I don't know how it is in Kazakhstan, but there are a bunch of common areas. In general, like cafe/lounge. It's like office spaces, workspaces, stuff like that. There are like a lot of public events. This is something else that people would do, is that we would do like events. That's part of why we called it network school as well. We had like events with like the Anthropic community. We had events with like OpenClaw. We had events with one like sub community with OpenAI. It was like open code and OpenAI or something like that. Not the main OpenAI brand, but like we had a bunch of like tech events, stuff like that. A lot of people coming in and doing those things, and doing like speaker presentations, talks, hackathons, building stuff, things like that. So there are a lot of occasions for people to get together too.
Okay, interesting. Cool. Well, okay, but then so you left, and now you are doing a completely different thing. Effort News.
Yeah, I'm back in SF. I'm building Effort News. I am fully automating investigative journalism.
Okay.
I shouldn't say that actually. It's interesting. Most people who say AI in journalism, their main focus is getting AI to write the articles, and for me, they just like haven't ever been good at that. It's kind of shocking, right? Like they're better at proving math theorems. They're better at like writing code. When it comes to like actually writing text for people to read, it's still surprisingly bad. So we handwrite all of the articles. I'm not literally like we're not like writing them with a pen, but like people write the articles. And what we actually use AI for is like querying 1 million or more like financial records or legal records, things like that. And I think, you know, once we see the stories, that'll be really obvious how that's used. But like stuff like that would have been impossible to do before. Like maybe ProPublica would have an investigation like this with like a team of 20 people every 10 years. It's like this totally crazy amount of effort. And now, you know, that's unlocked, and we can chase after these stories where, you know, 1 in 1,000 stories maybe will be a hit. And then like for the 1,000, it's just like, you know, the LLMs, you know, go over those documents. They don't find anything, you know, and we move on. And it's like a completely different world.
So let's start from the beginning here. Why does the world need AI automated journalism?
Well, it's like, you know, you start from the beginning. It's like, why do you need journalism, right? There's secrets in the world. You want to uncover those secrets. We have some stories like that, whether it's, you know, 19th century European family fortunes funding degrowth, whether it's, you know, British interference in like U.S. censorship laws, whether it's these like asylum grants that are going to a lot of the like most critical like anti-Trump, pro-asylum religious orgs. It's like once you see it, you know, right? You know it when you see it. It's like these like truth nukes that actually have been sitting around for like 5+ years, right? So that's the other part of it. It's like we've had the data to tell these stories. It's been publicly available for, in the case of the grants, it's been 5 years. For some of the European family fortunes, it's been older, right? You could say it's been centuries, literally. Not centuries since they've been funding these particular organizations, but centuries since they've been, you know, had these foundations. And that data, a lot of the time, it just doesn't get reported out. These are really big stories now. They're like thousands of likes on Twitter, and people just didn't know about them for years. And part of that is that, you know, like some people in the conservative media ecosystem or like, you know, new media ecosystem just like don't really care about investigative reporting or not, you know, putting in the resources. But another big part of that is AI, you know, another big part of that. Sometimes you just have the needles in the haystack. And even if, you know, you put a team of 20 people on it, it might take 10 years. And that quantity of being able to parse through documents for something newsworthy, that's the main, you know, that's like the lightning in the bottle. That's when I saw those stories, when I saw the actual, you know, fruits, that's when I realized like, oh, I absolutely have to be doing this full time.
Yeah. But so again, like, okay. So when you're thinking about, it would seem to be that finding aberrations in data or whatever it is something that would require human ingenuity. So where does the AI come in? What makes it AI? Like how are you training an LLM to dig up something? Are you sending the LLM in a certain direction? You know, like what are you? How does it work?
This is a clear example to illustrate what this looks like. One thing I did was create an offline copy of the federal Medicaid reimbursement database. And I just said, find all race-based Medicaid programs. So that's human direction, right? That's like a human idea. I'm like telling it to do this.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But if I were to look through the entire Medicaid federal funding database and look through and kind of search and see if, you know, go through each one and see if there are race-based criteria. I don't know how long that might take me. That might take me the rest of my life if I was doing it by myself. And of course, there are other software things that we could do before. We could, you know, kind of control F, you know, DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion. We can control F, you know, different races, stuff like that. And people have done that before, but, you know, obviously they didn't find this. And, you know,
well, wait. So what? Okay,
maybe this will be breaking news depending on when this podcast comes out. But there's a lot more that we're investigating based on that specific database and finding just all race-related programs in that database.
Okay, so all right. So it finds all race-related programs, but then what? Okay, right. But anybody can get an LLM to find all race-based programs, right? I mean, like that. So what then? happens? What you found the race-based programs, and then what did you then do? What's the story?
Yeah, so the story that is already out is this story on birth equity, on these programs in California that all take federal Medicaid funding and ration healthcare based on race. And these are programs that are exclusively for quote unquote Black women and birthing people. There are examples of people going out and trying to apply for these programs and being denied because they weren't Black. And that's all written up at effort.news/birth-equity.
Okay.
And
I looked at some of these stories.
Actually really interesting. Yeah. It's like this decision-making process, right? I think we talked about last time, when you're making like a human work of literature or human work of art, you're making all of these decisions. You're making all of these like conscious choices of what is important, what matters. And you're right that like that never comes from nowhere, right? It never comes from nowhere when humans are making it. It never comes from nowhere when AI is making it. That's actually something that we thought a lot about when we were writing the stories. Because we were writing the stories, I was going to say by hand again, but what I mean is, we were writing all of the text for the stories, me and the small number of people working for me. We were writing all of the stories, manually. And we were thinking about, especially with the Medicaid dump, what would be most important. And that kind of works back from what's newsworthy, right? What people would care about. And, first of all, violations of the law are super important. That's one aspect that we focus on here. We're talking about, the Civil Rights Act and the recent, changes in interpretation from the DOJ Civil Rights Division. Essentially, when the Civil Rights Act was passed, a lot of people came in, including the bill authors, and they assured us, definitely this will also prohibit reverse discrimination. It will also prohibit anti-white discrimination. For many decades, that was not actually enforced. There were tons of DEI programs, tons of anti-white discrimination. No one did anything about it. And then the Trump 2 admin came in under Harmeet Dillon and started doing things about it. And, publicly said, all races, this includes everyone. This includes, people affected by DEI programs. All races are protected under the Civil Rights Act and under equal protection. And that's like the newsworthy hook, is that the Medicaid programs, it's race-based discrimination is illegal in any case, but the Medicaid programs mean there's a very specific remedy here. There's a specific thing the government can do, which is the government has authority to shut off the federal Medicaid payments if they find that these programs are indeed discriminating based on race. And there's already some cases in the past where what they eventually did was they started what's called a review. The Department of Justice Civil Rights Division started a review of a health-based program that was discriminating on race in the Minnesota Department of Health, and another loan program in Illinois that was also discriminating based on race. These were these kind of like racial quotas for Black people or for non-white people. And in both cases, they essentially forced those programs to open themselves up to everyone, to remove the race-based criteria. So we were thinking about this when we were writing the story as well, because we got dumps of programs that were not just these three, but were very widespread. And we thought, okay, what's going to be important to people? Number one, it's going to be a clear violation of the law, which we have in this table: civil rights violations, California NATO programs. Number two, it's like a consistent theme, right? Both in California, interestingly, the most prominent ones in California, at least that we were reviewing so far, all had this like birth focus. It was like pretty weird coincidence, but I think like newsworthy in other ways, right? That it's like odd that they had this focus on like births specifically.
Mm-hmm.
And this legal connection, that number one, of course, that it's violating, in my opinion, violating federal civil rights law, And I think if you go by the text of the Civil Rights Act, that's pretty clear as well. And also that there's this federal remedy where they can, if they don't remove these race-based restrictions, shut off the Medicaid funding. So
Right.
those were the decisions that we were thinking through when we were publishing this story. And I think that's like an illustration of what you're asking about, right? Which is, at the end of the day, who decides? Who decides, what is newsworthy, what is not, what is going to be published, how we write the story, how even like things like how the story is laid out, or things like when do we choose to present charts, stuff like that. All of that is really important. And all of that is like, you can see it in this story, but it's like a combination of a science and an art. You can't really like fully explain it. You can't really fully rationalize like, oh, here's like the 100 bullet points of like what you should do when you're laying out an effort story. But those are the considerations that I have in mind.
But so it's not like I just feel like automated is not the right word, right? Because it's not automated.
Yeah, I especially don't like the phrase automated journalism.
Yeah, right. It's because it's not
when
automating
people hear that,
journalism.
they like think they think like the writing. Everyone who does that, who hears that word. And actually, it's kind of correct, because a lot of the people who have tried, something in the AI journalism sphere, in that space, they've tried automating the writing, and it just has been fucking slop. It just doesn't work. Maybe that'll change in the future, but right now it just completely fails. It just reads terribly. And when people hear that, when people hear AI journalism, they jump to that. But really what we're doing is that we're automating like a lot of the investigative work. That's why like AI automated
but it's not
investigations.
automating it. It's automating it only in the sense that you're using AI for research. But you're not automating. It's not, when you're saying automating, that makes it sound like the LLM or the AI is like coming up with the stories. But you're just saying you have the idea for the story, and then you send the LLM to do the research, right? I mean, isn't that what's happening? I'm not saying it's bad.
So in this case, that's like totally what's happening. In some cases, like the birth, or not the birth equity. So not in this case. This case, we kind of had a general level query, which was like, what are the race-based Medicaid programs? And then we did that. For some of them, it was just like, we downloaded a copy of the HHS grant table, and we went through and said, search for newsworthy findings. And then we added some criteria like, significant growth, recent growth, things like that in HHS grants. And that's how we found the Refugee Services program. It's interesting, actually, because this ended up being the most viral one. But I didn't start out for that one looking for refugee services in particular, actually. That one was just like, we had the HHS grants. I guess you could say that the human assumption there would be that, if there's a big spike in grants in recent years, that's newsworthy. And that's totally a human judgment. I think that's like a human judgment that most people would agree with, right? A big explosion in money. That's something that's newsworthy. But yeah, we were specifying some kind of direction, right? Which was like, find these big explosions in grant size, and then it did find these like very specific programs that ended up being extremely newsworthy, not just by my judgment, but by the judgment of the people. But I think you're right that like when people say like automation, a lot of the time they kind of envision this like cyberpunk future where like no one has any jobs. It's like, no. You actually still have to care. You still have to have exercise human judgment. You still have to, at least right now, certainly in our process, exercise a lot of human judgment in terms of, what is worth investigating, what data sources are worth investigating, what constitutes something that's newsworthy. And that's going to be our own judgment. That's going to be, who decides in the end, me and like two editors/writers decide. That is the story. That is how the stories get created, and people can go out and they can make their judgment on whether we're telling the truth and whether what we're saying is accurate. I obviously think it is. But yeah, you do still have a lot of like both at the front of the loop and at the bottom of the loop, a lot of human judgment.
So, where did it go? Which story are you talking about that went viral?
Yeah, the 1.2 billion
Okay,
in
Refugee
refugee
Services
services
Program that
programs.
funds
Yeah,
pro-asylum religious groups. Okay, so
that's
this
right.
is all the HIAS thing, and this is all like, oh, it's the Catholics and the Jews, and they're all funding this refugee
Not
bullshit.
just them, yeah, but yeah,
Yeah.
Catholic
Here,
Charities
let's look at it.
USA, U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops, HIAS, Church World Service, Episcopal Migration
So
Ministries,
where did
Lutheran
this go viral?
Immigration and
Where did you
Refugee
post
Services. Yeah,
this? Where did you post
so
it?
this
That it
is
went
on
viral?
X. I think it's sitting on. I this one was interesting because I think I actually made a mistake here. Speaking of the judgment and the layout, I made a mistake here, which is that I made the first tweet of the thread the graph of all of the grants going up instead of the audit of the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops. So the first tweet has
Where this is on your
840
account?
likes.
This is on your
Yeah,
account.
yeah, yeah. Yeah. Let me just
No, I
briefly
got it. I'm
send it
looking
to
at
you.
you.
I'm gonna send
I'm
it to you
looking
on
at
X.
you.
Okay, perfect.
Okay, so you
So the
basically
first
posted all of these yesterday.
2
2
days
days
ago.
ago. Sick, dude. I mean, look, sorry, I know I'm being very like critical. I love this. And
No
you're
worries. I
definitely,
welcome it. Yeah.
you're definitely the guy to do this. I mean, it just seems to me like basically what you're doing is launching a really cool investigative news site. I mean, I love this portion of the site that's null results. It's like these things that you looked into
Yeah,
and
yeah. A
didn't
lot of
find
people
anything.
love that.
I love that, dude. You should definitely keep that. And I love the design. You know, I think this weird sunflower thing is kind of interesting. But it's like, dude, you're just basically starting a one-man band that is a really good research news site, you know? I mean, bro, we should join forces. You know, we just launched a huge
Oh
news
yeah.
project. It's not news, it's you know, a magazine more in the like long form journalism sense, but in the more creative kind
Yeah,
of thing.
Mama.
But
I don't know if you're pronouncing it that way, but
mama,
great
mama,
publication.
mama,
Surprised, Mama.
not
Yeah,
mama.
yeah.
Mama. So, but yeah, we're both kind of doing the same thing here. So yeah, tell us about one of these. Tell us about one of the. So, are you just doing this yourself? Did you bootstrap this, or do you have funding?
It's totally bootstrapped. I mean, I'm fortunate enough to have a reasonable reasonable amount of money. What you would expect for someone who's worked in tech for a few years and has had reasonably high paying jobs.
Well, you and me are going to be fundraising at the same time, so we can help each other. But dude, I love this. Yeah, I mean,
I'm just not really worried about money right now.
Oh, so you're not going to fundraise at all?
We might do a fundraise for like the vibes, basically. But right now, it's like it might actually be already profitable. We of course you get a ton more subscriptions on launch day than anywhere else, but our burn rate is not really high. It's me, it's two other people I'm paying, who I think for now would prefer not to be mentioned publicly. But yeah, it's a small team. It's 3 people, and it's like all bootstrapped in terms of funding. And yeah, it's a new publication. And you can go to effort.news/subscribe to help us out.
You know what I would love for you to look into is the Spencer Pratt results. Because those were you are definitely the guy to do this. Those were the biggest crock of shit I have ever seen in my entire life. Just statistically, if you looked, I mean, again, I don't know how you would do it. You would have to figure out how to do it yourself. And
there's some accounting you could do. I looked into this a lot during 2020. And the issue is that a lot of people do it badly, and when you do it badly, you pollute it for everyone else. Like you make the true version of the story harder to report on when you do it wrong. So it'd take a while for us to look into this, even with LLMs. The problem is that so there's 2 types of records stories, right? There's like true records and there's false records. And true record stories are a lot easier to report on because it's like, oh, here's a record, read it. False record stories, there are ways to detect them. There are statistical techniques that people will go through. For example, very legitimate techniques that all of the major banks, all the major auditors, the big four auditors will use if they're looking through your financial statements and they're trying to figure out whether you like made up your revenue numbers. The IRS will use this to figure out whether you're like money laundering. However, those are probabilistic techniques. Those are typically ways to figure things out. They might be justification for an investigation. They might be, what the IRS uses not to convict you, but to kind of go in and get the warrant to search all of your records.
Yeah.
But it's very hard to make definitive conclusions, even for like audits, based on that statistical data. So it's hard to say. Take like false records or statistical methods that we use to detect false records and say we know 100% that that's false. Maybe you could say like more likely than not, or like these are leads. But it's hard to get that to the end without some kind of greater investigation authority. I think at the end, you need to go in and you need to actually find some kind of record. And that's a lot easier in the audit case as well, because either, you have to be keeping these financial records, or, if you're not keeping these financial records and turns out the money kind of like appeared out of nowhere, basically, then that in and of itself can lead.
That's a great idea. To cut through what you're saying.
That's not true with ballots. That's the biggest problem.
Why is that not?
Especially once the mail-in ballots are separated from the envelopes. The envelopes are what contain the addresses, but the ballots themselves, the mail-in ballots themselves, do not contain the addresses, do not contain the time of mailing. So it's very hard to validate them themselves. And right now, this is like a kind of meta level problem in LA and throughout, like I think throughout California, in many places in America as well. There's this process of like separating ballots from envelopes before they are counted. And the reasoning for this is like, oh, you want to you want to have like a separate, like neutral process for counting the ballots. You don't want that at the same time as like this other process that maybe has less screening of people who are just like taking stuff out of the envelopes, which itself is a kind of suspicious line of argument. I don't really agree with it. But right now you have this widespread process of like ballot separation, which means that it's very difficult to trace back the addresses from the ballots themselves. And so it's this case where, if I were the IRS and
keep talking, I'm just going to get water.
Just keep talking. Standard. Of course, it's a different standard, but if I were the IRS and I had, a taxpayer who was submitting financial records, like a business that was submitting financial records, and then I went in and they were like, well, we don't know. Or even worse, like, oh, we had the records and then we kind of like threw them all away and, separated out the previously matched documents. That would be extraordinarily suspicious. And of course, that's a different standard, right? That's the standard for tax evasion or some other kind of financial fraud. The laws are not the same. But from a moral perspective, I think it's really a negative practice. And it's like objectively a practice that leads to a lack of the data that you might otherwise use to make
which is intentional. I mean, I think, a lot of people didn't go through what I went through with the Pratt campaign and seeing it as close up as I did.
Tell me more. What was that story? Have you already talked about it on the pod?
I've talked about it a ton. So this was a big thing. I got retweeted by Elon on this topic. So I got an Elon tweet because, like, look here, let me just show you really quick. So here's like what happened here. So like All right. Here is this is like the most basic description of the numbers. Okay, so here's what happened, right? You probably saw this with Bass, Rahman, Pratt, right? Bass and Rahman are basically equally far left, right? The Rahman is like a little more DSA-ish. I think the DSA itself was behind Rahman, right? So here you have this situation where LA, it's a jungle primary. So the top two advance. So this is like a really unique set of characteristics that don't usually happen, right? You have a jungle primary, so only two advance. You have three candidates that don't really have a different party. They're all basically running as Dems, although Pratt is, of course, the right wing of them. Bass is also a far left progressive, and she's black. She's like trained with the communist. She trained with Castro. She is in every way. It's not like Bass is like a super
considered to be Biden's VP.
She's not like a super centrist. Like she's like very far left, right? I mean, she's a little bit more of like a machine person, but there's not really. It's not super clear that Bass is more far left really than Rahman. I mean, Rahman is more like sort of DSA-ish, like rich girl-ish, right? But it's not really, there's no real actual difference between the two, right? So what you have is this situation where the night of the election results are released. It's total bullshit in LA where everybody gets a ballot. You can send it. It can be received like 8 days later. The shit's not counted for 28 days. So the night of, Pratt was way overperforming Nithya Rahman. Nithya Rahman really has no actual following at all. Nobody knew who she was. She's a very weak candidate. She's not charismatic. She sucks. She really had nobody going for her. The night of, I was like, I've got a bad feeling about this. Something seems weird. The way they were messaging it, it was like, oh yeah. And by the way, the Polymarket market, the night of, even though Pratt was way ahead, the Polymarket market, as soon as the initial results came out, flipped entirely to Rahman. Right? So somebody knew, somebody had some number that they knew, okay, Rahman can overcome this deficit because we have this many ballots that we can control, right? So in the normal explanation of this, you would have, okay, say that you want to believe, okay, it's ballot harvesting, whatever. We know that ballot harvesting happens, no big deal, whatever it is. That would then mean if you had ballot harvesting, you would not then be able to tell forensically that Bass or Rahman necessarily would be the bigger candidate, right? Because you would be harvesting ballots from left-wing-ish organizations. But if you're going with left-wing people, there's no way to determine that one of your two left-wing candidates is going to go bigger with ballot harvesting, right? So it doesn't make any sense. These numbers are literally impossible unless the DSA or the Bass campaign or somebody could control, actually like press the button in controlling that Rahman could magically, after the initial ballots were cast, after the initial mail-ins were counted, only with late mail-ins received after the initial count was tallied, only those mail-ins would go drastically to a third place Dem candidate and go zero to another progressive Dem leading candidate, right? There is no explanation for this at all. Am I insane?
Yeah, and I think something that really caught my eye was the massive difference between Abbas and Rahman in the late ballots, because Abbas was the person who ultimately won the election, right, or got first place in this election. in the initial vote, she was leading both Raman and Prat significantly, and um, like you said, like she is a very left wing Democrat, and if you're counting the ballots, what I would expect, what I would have expected 100% before would be like, okay, maybe they both do better than Pratt. Maybe left
Exactly.
wing
They should
people
go
like to
right.
vote,
If
like to
it was
mail in vote
ballot,
more.
exactly. If it was ballot
But I would
harvesting,
still expect Bass to beat Raman considerably, maybe by the same or slight variance by the amount that she beat Raman in the initial ballots. But that's not what happened.
yeah, exactly. If it was ballot harvesting, which should be illegal anyway, I mean, ballot harvesting should be unconstitutional. But even if it was that, and say you're going to these reliably left-wing populations and they're voting for themselves, right? You would see those two lines going roughly like this, right? Because you're getting, the left-wing people just happen to vote late mail-in, and we harvested their ballots, right? And we mailed them in. That would make sense, but it cannot happen unless you can actually control it. That for some magical reason, only the less popular left-wing candidate would magically go up and the other one would go flat. I cannot think of any explanation for that besides cheating. They have to be controlling what is going. They must have this many ballots that they can control who it votes for, and they just do it that way. There's no other. I cannot think of any other rational explanation for it.
Yeah, there's like some kind of like technically legal explanation where like, oh, the DSA machine was just better, and there's some cases where you can say that happened, right? Like the DSA machine in like New York, right, won a ton of primaries, and maybe there's also some interesting questions around that.
So that's
like one theory.
But okay, so say that so fine. Let's go with that theory. Let's say that the DSA machine is just better, right? Fine. Why would the DSA machine and not by the way, surely the DSA machine last time was working for Bass, and she also went way up. So say fine, okay. So this time, let's just imagine that Bass is abandoned by the DSA, and the DSA now this time is only going for Nithya, right? Not true, but say that that's what's happening. And both of these people obviously have massive ballot harvesting operations, right? Why would they? Of course they do. Everybody has ballot harvesting operations. You got Bass's ballot harvesters. You got DSA ballot harvesters. You got Spencer Pratt ballot harvesters. They're all ballot harvesting the whole time. Every mail-in, every vote up until the vote is released is one pattern. Only the votes after the vote has been released, only that ballot harvesting operation for some reason is late. Why would that ballot harvesting operation be later than the other ballot harvesting operations? There's no reason for that. Like, to me, it's just very, very obvious that they are. It's so obvious. I mean, it's like it's beyond a reasonable doubt, in my opinion. Like looking at those numbers and watching what happened. So anyway, let's go back to. Sorry, I just feel like this would be like a cool thing.
I think this is really fascinating because it's this like loophole in the procedural system. It's like a fascinating question of legal and political theory of are there such things as crimes that cannot be traced, crimes that cannot be marked, this kind of like incompleteness stuff, crimes that can never be prosecuted on. This is an interesting case because how would we go about like finding the suspect, right? How would we go about finding the person who actually committed what would be a fraud conviction, right? and you could say that's simply like a lack of data problem. I think that's part of it, but it's this like emerging procedural loophole. I remember there was this like famous mathematician, Gödel, who said that I've discovered a flaw in the U.S. Constitution, and he never said what it was. But he said I've discovered like a logical flaw that will destroy the U.S. Constitution. I don't know. Maybe he figured out anchor babies, 150 years ahead of time. But it's this kind of thing where, is this really like a loophole? Is this really like a complete and total like bug? Is this really something that the system has no remedy to? I guess the remedy would have to be something like, oh, we pass laws that mandate more data collection. But how are you doing that in California? It's like,
well, I think so.
It's grim, man. It's grim.
No, it's really grim. But actually, one of the great things about your work with effort, and I think this is what makes it effort. Sorry, getting over a cold. What makes it effort news is that you're sort of giving people actionable stuff to do. Like, you're giving institutions actionable things to do with the data, and that's great. And you should really keep doing that, because that's like you're giving people data and then like teeth with which to use it. And so I think that's really powerful. And I think that is going to get you very well funded over the years, because no one's doing that. Nobody is doing that effectively. It's the problem with the entire right-wing sphere is it's just blabbering. I don't know if you've noticed that. A lot of people get paid to blabber, and they actually don't want to give you anything to do, because they get paid to not do anything, right? That's kind of their point.
Yeah, it's like all commentary, and it all converges on like things that look like the New York Post. Actually, like the New York Post is an interesting example, because the New York Post actually breaks stories. The New York Post actually does like better work than a lot of these publications. But like every publication ends up copying like the aesthetics of the New York Post. And it's just like, I mean, like, do the people publishing them even like reading this? Like,
no, I don't think anybody reads it. I mean, I've written.
It's just painful.
Without naming any of them, I've written for a couple of these. And in writing and publishing with it, I realized like, oh, no one reads this. Nobody reads this. It's just like red meat, it's just like tossing red meat to a bunch of people that agree with you already. And they get to go, yep. Oh, the woke is at it again. It's completely fake. And the thing, and you can see this happening to Spencer Pratt, by the way. What they want, and I noticed this I went to AmFest, and AmFest is basically a convention of right-wing broadcasters, more or less. And so everybody there just wants to be a broadcaster. And I asked Charlie Kirk there when I interviewed him 2 years ago, and I was like, who do you want to be? And he said, I want to be Rush Limbaugh. I've said this 1,000 times, so sorry for people who've heard this before. But it was shocking to me, because I was like, why Rush Limbaugh? Like, would a leftist want to be Rush Limbaugh? Like, no, a leftist wants to be fucking president. A leftist wants to be the mayor. Whereas people on the right, they want to be the broadcaster. And the reason for that is because then they work for the regime. Like if you go, say what Spencer Pratt right now, right? Say that he goes and he takes a job railing against communism every day. He takes $1 million deal. He's on TV. He's railing against communism every day. The regime wants that, right? That's exactly where they want Spencer Pratt, because then he's this kind of ineffectual heckler that kind of, people can go and follow him, and he never has any real power, right? He's never the mayor. He's never anything, but he kind of discharges people's anger, and it gives them the perception that they're doing something, right? That's what the entire, most of the right-wing media ecosystem is. It's just people getting paid a lot of money to like shake their fist at the sky, And I think that what's great about what you're doing is that it's not that. You're saying, hey, here's real research and here is real stuff you can do policy-wise to actually do something about this.
Yeah, and something that I've personally been really irritated at is that, I mean, it's probably still, making the world better. It's probably better than the alternative. But a lot of the new media channels that have popped up, many of whom I'm friends with, many of whom are like very talented people, are just interested in building up different personalities to talk about the same stories.
Yeah.
Like they want to talk about it from this new angle, either a right wing angle or like a tech angle or so on and
Right.
so forth. But at the end of the day, they're still talking about the same stories. And how
Yeah.
much different can you be from the New York Times if you're just talking about
If
all
you're
the
just
things
talking about
already
exactly,
reported in the New York
right.
Times?
Yeah, exactly. They're totally governing the frame. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'd complained about it before. I like try to stay positive about these things,
Of course.
but at the end of the day, like, okay, now I'm like actually doing something about it, and that's
Yeah.
the most important thing to do, in my opinion. Like, actually do something about the problem, and I'm doing it. We're fixing this.
No, you're doing it, dude. So and you are one of the few people who like has the ability to do this. So tell us about one of these stories. Let's dig into one of these stories. Let's dig into the big one that you were just talking about.
Yeah, let's dive in. The 1.2 billion refugee services program that funds pro-asylum religious groups. So you can see on the first graph, this is a program that had around $16 million in funding prior to 2021, and in 2021 that jumps all the way up to 1.2 billion. It jumps up to this massive number.
Okay, so this is in 2016, the refugee services program that funds Okay, so this is a federal program.
Yes, this is a federal program. It is managed under the Administration for Children and Families, which is under HHS. If you have any viewers who are or listeners who are under the ACF and HHS, this would be your time to act. But it is so the HHS issued 1.2 billion in additional grants in 2021, and it came about in a really interesting way too.
Wait, so okay, so it starts going up in 2013 because it just doesn't exist until 2013.
It exists, but it's like very low millions, and it goes to like tens of millions.
Why does it go up? Okay, so it goes up under Obama. It starts going up. And then, I mean, it does kind of go up under Trump, but then it goes massively. Well, no, but here it looks like it would have gone up under Trump here.
Yeah, I believe it did. Let
Okay.
me find the exact date. Just double checking. It is not. What I'm doing actually, I'm scrolling down to the bottom where I'm linking the entire table of grants.
Down here.
Yeah. So this was under. So this was under. It was in 2016. So I believe this would have actually been before Trump. This would have been September 2016.
Okay, so they basically injected this thing with tons of money just before Trump.
Yeah, it's funny. I think Trump like totally dominated the culture in 2016. That we sometimes like we think he's president before 2016 or like during 2016. But no, Obama was still president through to the inauguration in 2017. So yeah, this would have been before Trump won.
Okay, so tell the story here. So this random group, which is in the HHS, federal money, they, before Trump, start pouring money into these no borders religious groups. So describe what's happening.
Yeah. So the 1.2 billion at the beginning when the grants were issued, each grant had a maximum cap of $4.5 million. And you can now see $4.5 million per year. And you can now see it's way over that now. So how did that happen? It happened through this loophole where you can take an grant and you can expand it way above the original limit. So you can't just say, okay, here's a grant, it's more than 4.5 million, but you can say, here's a grant for 1 million, and later that year, or in future years, say, well, we've increased this 1 million grant to 162 million over 5 years, which is one of the actual grant amounts. And so now you have these organizations getting 162 million in the case of Church World Service, 141 million in the case of U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops, 80 million for Episcopal Migration Ministries, 159 million for Lutheran Immigration and Refugee Services.
Yeah, I've seen these
Way
things
the
before.
original
And HIS, that's the Jewish one, was Hebrew
Yes.
something.
Yeah.
So
You heard of these guys before, have you?
Yeah, I have definitely heard of them before. Highest. Yeah. Okay. So these people are essentially doing what? What are these organizations exactly doing? What is the money going to?
So the money is going to migration. It's very vague. From the audits, it just says migration and refugee services. So this like large batch of income, 81.8% in the case of USCCB of revenue, goes towards providing migration and refugee services. And the Preferred Communities program specifically is about sort of moving refugees to specific communities where they would be theoretically more able to make a living for themselves. And part of that program as well is also refugees who have particular difficulties resettling. I believe that's the exact quote. I don't have it in the piece, but I believe that's an exact quote from the official description. I'm just double checking it now, but the idea is that refugees, they come into the U.S., but maybe they're not able to get a home, or maybe they're not able to find a community where they really fit in. You can kind of steelman this by saying like, oh, this is something that could theoretically help them to assimilate, and then help them to start having a job and stuff like that. But it's essentially like providing services for refugees who are already in the United States, and it's hard to delineate past that. And it's hard to delineate the broader pool of migration and revenue services grants, because not all of those are specifically directed to refugees. So some of them could be economic migrants, could be other types of migrants, and it kind of all gets pooled together into one program under, for example, USCCB. And it's very hard to, or they provide no funding breakdowns for what percentage of this is actually going to like people with a legal claim to asylum, what percentage of this is going to other migrants. Basically, we don't know, but in theory, they're all going towards migration and refugee services.
Yeah. Okay. So it's like free stuff, like probably like
So some examples from the site
is
that they like help someone like either buy a home or pay rent, right? They help someone have somewhere to live.
Fucking insane, dude. Fucking insane. And so how does this all happen? Like, how is this shit so hijacked that it's like these fake religious? I mean, is this just corruption? Like this feels so like managed, right? Like how are all these things have kind of similar names? They're all vague. Yeah. Like each one has a different religious flavor. Like who is doing this? It seems so well organized, and like so not naturally occurring.
Yeah, it was really interesting. It's not all of them, but I think the majority of funding, you just count up the numbers, it's more than half of 1.2 billion. The majority of funding was going to these religious groups in particular. And on one hand, that could be a coincidence. It could be like, oh, they already have churches, they already have real estate, they have places where they could let people sleep, and that's a kind of synergy there. But it's otherwise pretty odd that like half of the program are going to these specifically religious organizations. And of course, religious organizations that have a long history of opposition to Trump and of advocating for these policies. And the immediate like plain smoking red flag is whenever these organizations are peddled out as like reputable critics of Trump's migration policy. It's like, okay, you say what you want about like Ford Motor Company, but when Ford Motor Company comes out and says we should have more subsidies for cars, you should all buy a car, the government should buy some cars, it's like, are you really a credible source of information? And it's actually it's the exact same pattern here. And there a lot of the time media will represent them as reputable sources,
so
reputable
weird.
critics,
It's
and they will
so
not
fucking
disclose any financial conflicts of interest. It's this massive financial conflict of interest.
It's so strange, and it's so. Why didn't you put the Jewish one on here? On this one, you don't
I
have
did
that
put it
one.
on the graph.
Typical Zionist shill, Brian Chau.
Yeah, I put it on the graph.
Well, also the Catholic one seems to start
the total
only
amounts
later
as well.
on, but it's just so weird that each one of these has its own little flavor. You know, one is Lutheran, one is Episcopal, one is Catholic. You know, and it's like, and they're all just, it's pouring money. It's just so fucking corrupt and fake.
Yeah, and
it's unbelievable.
It's not even like a small subsidy, right? It's not like a tiny piece.
Yeah, it's huge amounts of money, right? And you got to imagine the guys make. I mean, the people in charge of this have to be making huge salaries, right? I mean, did you include that at all? Like whoever, like the guy, can you find that out? You can look at
around
the 990s or whatever. You can look at what the heads of these things are making. You know, like what does the head of the HIAS make?
I did actually look into this, not for HIAS specifically, but I think like, it was a few $100,000 for the USCCB, and I did put out here. Migration and refugee services pay for 13.4 million out of 36.6 million in US CCB salaries, taxes, and benefits, or roughly 36.6% of all STBs. So, like, by the amount of money paid out, roughly 36.6% of the people who are employed by USCCB, or like 36.6% of the money that's going out, comes from the migration and refugee services.
Okay, so but we don't know. One good thing to include would be find the salaries of each of these people. You know, what are they making? They just outed this woman in LA who was making, she made over 2 years $1.4 million in salary to run the homelessness, whatever bullshit. And she is a woman living in Hawaii, a white Jewish woman living in Hawaii. And it's like, that obviously the left turned on her to put that in LA Weekly, or LA Times. But in any case, I think that would be an interesting thing to include because somebody is getting all of this money. It's so weird and organized. This was such a great call because I've heard of these things before, and it's like getting into this stuff is really smart. Look at all these, a lot of Asians in here. What's with all the Asians? Interesting, man. Very crazy. This is great. And of course, we have the Ethiopian timeline. Oh, dude, just this one. You could do a thing on just the Ethiopian community. Yeah. As part of this program, the Ethiopian Community Development Council got $92 million. Since
there was a lot in this drop. Actually, that's a consistent pattern with these stories where it's like, I don't want to make them too long. There's this
I'm going to retweet this
rule of life that I always abide by.
Wait, so hold on really quick, Brian. This number is as part of this program. This is since what date? 92 million ever?
This is cumulative. So this is total.
Yeah. Okay. Got it.
Yeah, this is. Oh wait, no. Sorry, I thought you were looking at a different table. This is just in 2024.
This is just in 2024.
Yes, it is, or fiscal year 2024. But yeah, this is just in 1 year.
God, and that's from the federal government.
Yes.
Oh,
these are all federal grants.
Jesus Christ, man, that is fucking ridiculous. Hold on, I gotta retweet you on this. I gotta find your thing here because this is just so insane. Oh man. Oh, dude, nice. Mike Flynn is retweeting you. He used to retweet me. What did it come back, Mike Flynn? Where did he go? All right. So yeah, sorry. Continue what you were saying. I'm just trying to find your tweet so I can retweet this right now. But go ahead.
Yeah. So a big thing with all of these stories is that there's a lot more here. Yeah, you're right. You're right to criticize. Not more on the Ethiopian, Community Development Council, not more on Hias, but at some point you kind of have to call it. I know there is some, there are some publications that will do massive, almost books, 2-hour reads. That was not what we were going for our launch. We to be honest, we're kind of conscious of people's attention spans. We're kind of conscious of how long people will read our articles. And there's a lot more there. We'll totally do more articles in the future on it. But that was mostly the calculation. It was like, if we make it too long, people are just gonna stop reading. But yeah, there's a lot of this in the treasure troves. This is something different. This is not exactly the same consideration, but we had a similar internal discussion on another story in the Medicaid batch, which is what we ended up published being a pretty short story. It was just like these 3 programs in California. But there is a lot more there. And we were thinking, like, how much do we want to do? Do you want to do like one massive drop of all of the race-based Medicaid, across the country? And we started like conceptualizing, talking about what that would look like, and that could be pages, and that could be pages and pages and pages. That could be like a 3-hour read. So we ended up not deciding to do that, and we ended up leaving some stuff out of this story, but they will be absolutely in future stories.
Really good, dude. Yeah, I think there's like a lot of stuff you can pull out here. All right, give it before you have to go. Give us one more of these stories. What's another one? Oh,
sorry. I think I think you cut out slightly there.
No, I said give us one more of these stories. What's another one? What's another?
Let's do the UK story. I think that one's not had enough coverage. This one's I thought this one would be the second biggest one. The second biggest one, I think, ended up being close to a tie between the degrowth and the California Medicaid. But this one's really messed up because in the UK they had this really like whole of society approach. That's actually a term that comes from them. Jacob Siegel had a great book about this as well, not just about the UK, but kind of around the world. But yeah, they have the system of surveillance, of censorship, and ultimately of literal arrests of people who are convicted of, hate speech or psychological harm. They don't have the First Amendment there. And there was this open question of like, would the UK stop at just censorship, right? Just messing with the algorithm, just deplatforming people? No, they are arresting people. They are putting people in jail for speech crimes, for saying things that politically they don't agree with. And the beginning phase of those laws, many British NGOs are now trying to pass in America, especially in American states. And you can have an entire, debate over whether we should have age verification, how that should go about. But when they are coming from, when the, jailing people for speech crimes island is exporting laws, in some cases overtly, the lawmakers are like, we copied the British law, overtly copying laws from the speech crime island. I'm a little suspicious of that. I think those laws in particular we shouldn't do. And we can see the entire state map here. So this is something that we put together. If you scroll down, is this map of 17 bills that have been passed. Wow. and 60 engagements from these organizations. And we can get right into them too.
Age appropriate design code. So where is this stuff coming from? Where are these laws coming from?
So Five Rights was founded by
what is this? Five Rights?
Yeah, this is NGO. These are all NGOs. They're all British NGOs.
Where is
or their US affiliates.
So where are you talking about?
You can scroll down a bit more. like one paragraph?
Uh, 5 Rights is a British nonprofit.
Yeah.
Found by
So
Barius
Five Rights.
Beban Tanya Kidrone. Who the fuck is
Yeah.
that?
A member of the UK Parliament. So a baroness.
Wow.
I do love their titles. There's like an American, innate like American like hatred of the British titles. Like you're telling me a baroness wants to implement these speech laws in the U.S. But yeah, so this is the baroness. It's a British title, but it also means something. In this case, it means a life appointment
Don't
to
early
the
life.
upper house.
Whatever you do not early life Baroness Kidron. Not not what you want to see. Anyway, yeah, keep going.
Yeah, and it's amazing you know about that. But she founded this organization called Five Rights. Five Rights then lobbied in the U.S. for this age-appropriate design code. That's what they call it.
Yeah, what is
which
that?
is a bill that includes digital
design.
ID.
Yeah.
It implements it through this like opaque committee. So you're seeing this trend in California and New York, also in a bunch of other states, where it's like we will pass a law to make a committee, and what the committee does becomes law. And so like you're voting on something you don't even know what'll happen. It's just like crazy thing that's becoming increasingly popular in both the UK and the US. That's also exactly how the British version did it. And in the announcement of the law, or in one of the announcements for the law, both the legislators who authored the law, along with Five Rights Foundation, who's credited with helping to write the law, says that it draws on the UK's age-appropriate design code. So it says that it is intentionally copying the British version of like essentially the same law.
Okay,
has the
so
same
she's
fucking name.
trying to export this law to America, and she somehow got this passed. Jesus Christ, man.
Yes.
This is effing depressing. But this is even better because nobody knows about this. I mean, how did you even come up with this? How did you even get this idea? Did you have some like lead? Like, how did you, man, you are doing God's work, dude. How did you find this lead?
This one, the start of this one might have been like the most like the most like AI involvement. It was basically like find like coordinated state actions linked to foreign NGOs related to tech laws or something like that in the US, in US states. And that was it. We didn't have a predetermined data source. I mean, there are kind of like well-known ones for this, like, the legislative filings in each of the states. Part of the problem of why this has been so hard to do by hand historically, even by like human programmers, is that there are separate state registers, and they'll have like slightly different, codes and slightly different like ways of accessing them and stuff like that. And so to put together all of it in one place is really difficult.
Yeah, dude.
And AI made that a lot easier to do.
So how did something like Five Rights, how did they get this on the ballot? Do you know?
So
like, how do they get these things on the ballot?
This wasn't a ballot measure. It was like a regular law. But I mean, this is like a pretty common like legislative process. It's actually extremely common, both for laws that I think, including some laws that we would agree with probably, for there to be co-sponsors or co-drafters that are like basically like nonprofits or universities or these kinds of things, or individuals, like private individuals, not legislators. And essentially, what they did is that they found legislators who would work with them, including in this case the chairwoman Wicks, who's a very powerful legislator in the California House.
Yeah.
And convinced them to author this bill and co-authored it with them, and introduced it to the assembly, and then introduced it to voted on it in the California Senate, and I think signed by the governor, or in any case, whether the governor signed it or whether it got overridden, it's law now.
Insane. Completely insane, man. So what is this law? Like warning labels, like what? So it's one of these ones that passed. Do we know, like, for example, okay, age appropriate design code of conduct. So we click on here and then we can actually read what it says.
Yep.
So what is this? Do you know offhand? Like what this one that passed in California? Let's see. What does this one say? Do we know?
Yeah. So the most egregious measures are those against or those advocating for or making into law digital ID. And the rhetoric around this is always you don't want minors to be on certain social media sites, stuff like that. But it's this chicken and egg problem where how do you know someone's a minor without collecting their private information?
I see.
And once
So
you collect their private information, will they really be anonymous?
Okay, so this is basically saying, okay, and would require a business. Okay, this bill would enact the California Age Appropriate Design Code Act, which I guess is the law in California, which would, among other things, require a business that provides an online service, product, or feature likely to be accessed by children to comply with specified requirements, including a requirement to configure all default privacy settings offered by the online service, product, or feature to the settings that offer the highest level of privacy, unless the business can demonstrate a compelling reason that a different setting is in the best interest of the children and to provide privacy information, blah, 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 blah. The bill will require a business before. Okay, so they leave out the idea first. Action impact assessment is that feature. So far, this one seems pretty innocuous, honestly.
Yeah, the main component is the age verification. There's a lot of other things that get crammed into it, and the full extent of the bill is actually not clear at time of passing. So we now know more about it because the actual committee came down and made their decisions. But it's actually maybe this is something I could do to improve the map as well. Link to the finalized committee findings.
No, well, the finalized. Wait. What are the finalized committee findings?
Okay, let's see.
I'm trying to find the ID part of this because, as you're saying, this is motivated by collecting people's IDs, right? So, but I can't find in the California one. I can't find that. I can't find the ID.
So this is the age verification component.
Okay.
Verify.
Oh, here we go. Take reasonable steps to ensure that the purchaser is of legal age at the time of purchase or delivery, including verifying the age of the purchaser.
Yeah.
Business is required to comply with rules from retaining, using. Okay. Existing law prohibits a person or business that is required to comply with these provisions from retaining, using, or disclosing any information it receives in an effort to verify age, except as specified and subject to business or a person that filed. Okay. Well, to be perfectly fair, this California one doesn't seem too bad because it's basically saying they can't use it for anything else. So it does kind of seem like this one is not. I mean, maybe you are right that overall these 5 rights fucking things are doing this, and maybe it's they do this lawfare bit by bit over time, right?
Yeah, I know people who advocate for age verification laws from more conservative perspective, and that's totally a policy debate you can have. I'm not saying that those laws are de facto evil. I think I say this more. I kind of try to keep the editorializing to a minimum. Here, but I do kind of put a disclaimer like that at the bottom of in theory, there may be age verification laws which do not contribute to authoritarian control of speech. However, when foreign principals are lobbying for age verification law during a time when those laws are being used to suppress political speech in their home countries, it cannot be a surprise if those laws are used for the same purposes in America. So it's more and this will be more clear as we go through the article, because I also point to potential legal violations that these organizations are committing. But it's more get these Brits out of our country, more like that than you can never have age verification laws. It's in theory, it's a lot less bad, if bad at all, in a vacuum, right? Because in the UK, the main problem, is not just the age verification laws. Maybe you still want people to be able to be anonymous for other reasons, like, oh, there might be debanking or like cancellations or stuff like that. But it's made a lot worse in the UK by the literal speech crime laws that they have. And, I do think there is a difference between the US and the UK. I do think we will actually still have First Amendment protections, at least from like the actual government. Once again, you might still have cancellations, you might still have deplatforming. I'm not in favor of any of that, but it is particularly bad in the UK. So that's like a totally fair criticism. But it's just very hard to imagine these organizations have good intentions, even if they're supporting laws that theoretically, could also be supported by like people we know. And the remedy here is not to say like, oh, we should just be like completely like negatively reacting to all these laws. It's like, actually, we should take measures, including some measures that may already be in existing U.S. law against these like foreign NGOs. And we can get more into that angle as well.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think you're right that what is happening is exactly what's happening. It's just that one that I looked at seems to be pretty safe, but I don't know. It's a fascinating thing. And looking like, why the hell is this British? Why are the British doing like what is their interest in this at all? How is that even allowed? How can a British organization?
It's not like
why?
It's that tweet of like.
Yeah,
that tweet of like how today I found out that like Trump revoked federal funding for MS-13 or something like that. Right?
Yeah,
it's that tweet of like what? And the Foreign Agents Registration Act is something similar. It's like you are actually legally allowed to lobby for foreign agents and foreign governments as long as you tell us ahead of time. And even then, they may not be following the law. Of course, that's to be heard out in a court. I don't I can't guess the kind of convictions. I can't say that they're guilty of something before a trial. All of the necessary legal disclaimers. But one of these organizations already filed FARA. They were missing information on several of the questions. Another organization, CCDH. Which was already very well known in the censorship industrial complex for doing the ex-boycott campaign, also lobbied for a bunch of these laws, and were accused actually in 2014, or sorry, not 2014, 2024, of violating FARA by AF Legal, which of course is Stephen Miller's thing, and he's now in the admin. So I wonder what they're doing about this.
Dude, can I add you to this FaceFags group chat?
Sure.
I'm going to add you to it because you need to show this.
I'm a proud face fag.
You need to, yeah, me too. Well, this is what I'm actually, to be perfectly honest, and everybody really hates me for this. I think anonymity is not great, personally, and not for any of this reason. I don't want to obviously, enforce speech laws against anybody, but I do think overall, we have not been served by men being anonymous. What do you think? Are you still big pro anonymity?
I think we should have it. I think obviously, like, I'm not anon, and I made that choice. Actually, I started writing as an anon like 5 years ago, and then after like a few months, I ended up deciding not to do that for various reasons. One was just like Tablet at the time was not taking anon submissions, and I wanted. And they said like, this looks good, but we won't publish under your real name, and I thought like, yeah, let's do it. But I'm also in the position where I don't have to particularly worry about my financial circumstances, even if my views are well known. And
I just think
that's not something that everyone has, right? Like, at the end of the day, you could say, maybe you shouldn't be working for these big corporations if they're going to fire you over your views anyway. But like, at the end of the day, if it's a choice between, posting under your own name or, posting anon and, being able to feed your family, like I totally understand why people want to do that. whether it's like good for the discourse,
I just
might
don't.
be bad for the
that's
discourse.
a-
Maybe they shouldn't post at all, right?
Well, and it's
Maybe
also
they should
just
chill.
like, dude, what has this done? All this has done is created an environment where men go to work and talk shit on the internet and then are complete pussies when it comes to their actual lives. You know, they get pushed around by women at work, they get pushed around by women at home. They're terrified of saying their beliefs. They're terrified of going outside of the very narrow set of things that they can say. And then they discharge it. They have the safety valve where they go online and say the craziest shit, right? And it's just not healthy. Like men,
yeah.
you know what I mean? Like it's men's job.
Yeah, there's something really
set the tone.
sacrificial about
Yeah.
the like, you know, we'll like post as hard as we can online, and then we'll say the N-word and we'll say all of this stuff online, but like in real life you're not doing anything. There's some way where that, like, you know, sacrificial energy gets channeled into the Anon account. I think you're right. Now that I've thought about it more, it's probably been worse for
on balance. I think it has not been good for the world, you know, to allow that. It's also all the lame anonymous bullshit that goes on with people just mistreating each other. It's like, you're supposed to be attached to, look, some level of anonymity is fine, and many anons are great, and I totally get it, but there should be some connective tissue between yourself and your speech. You know, there should be something. You know what I mean? Because then you know what risks you're willing to take. Then you know what you really stand for. You know, if you're willing to make sacrifices for having this opinion, then you really hold that opinion. If you're just out there saying whatever the fuck you want from behind a computer all day, it's just like, okay, do you really believe these things, or are you just saying, you know, the craziest thing? Because
you're just farming for clout.
Yeah, right. Anyway, this is a topic for another time. Okay, bro, thank you so much. This was fantastic. Really, you really sold me on it there in the end. This is really good shit. So I'm going to show this as much as I can. And yeah, please stay in touch. I'm going to add you to this group chat. And yeah, man, thanks for coming on.
Hell yeah. Glad to be here.
Peace.